What is a simple, painful fact that people need to just get over and accept? You can do everything right and still fail. Not everyone you meet in life will like you. Sometimes you're the asshole. That's okay. Just acknowledge it and do better next time. Most friendships are friendships of convenience. Once you stop seeing someone every day at work or school, you'll realize how little you actually have in common and inevitably drift apart. That's why true lasting friendships are something to be treasured. Your life can change in the blink of an eye and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Bad things happen to good people. Nothing is fixed in place forever and all is eventually forgotten. Enjoy the now, prepare for tomorrow and rarely worry about what the world thinks of you. Not everyone is going to have the heart you have. Bodies age before minds. Most of us are mediocre. Most of us will not be extraordinary, by definition. Most of us will have small, hopefully nice and quiet lives, with little impact or grand legacy. And that is not failure. Sometimes you don't get closure. You just have to move on. It's really fucking easy to believe a lie that fits your worldview. The more you say, obviously, when you hear a fact, the more you should be skeptical of it. Your ex is an ex. Move on. Clinging on to a failed relationship isn't healthy and consistently talking about it starts to bore and annoy everyone around you. Your family members are not necessarily good people, and you don't have to love them. Your body is fragile and you can die 24/7, anywhere, in 1,000 different ways. Nothing stays gold. Enjoy the moment while you can, cause not everything perfect currently will stay perfect. An apology without corrective behavior is just manipulation. Don't apologize if you're not going to change, and yes, sometimes that means walking away and leaving things unresolved. It's still better than letting a bad situation go on for longer than it has to. You will be forgotten within 2 generations. If someone's into you, they'll seek out time with you. If they don't and you're doing all the chasing, move on. When was your gut feeling actually right? Twice, while delivering pizza to shady neighborhoods. Things didn't look right, I trusted my instincts and booked. Both times, no one ever called back to ask about their food never arriving. That's all the proof I need. Growing up, I was always wary of my uncle on my dad's side of the family, not blood-related. Even as a young child, I just knew that I didn't like being around him. He never gave me any reason to feel this way, and I never voiced it to anyone. As I grew older, my family moved away and I saw less of him, but anytime my extended family met for holidays I would see him and avoid him. Couple years down the track, I was around 12 or 13 when my parents sat me and my older brother down and told us that my cousin, my uncle's daughter, had been raped and molested by him from a young age. This had all come to light when my aunt caught it happening, later found out she was abused by him too. Really wish my gut feeling hadn't been right about that one. Helped a victim of human trafficking get to a shelter. Context. I was a medical student at the time, now a resident, and the city my school was in is a hub for human trafficking. I noticed a patient in the ER who had a pretty bad injury to her face was with a sketchy-looking guy who was not related to her. She wasn't my patient, but I brought my gut feeling up to her doctor, who then made up some excuse to talk to the patient alone and got her to help. I never talked to her myself, but I couldn't shake the vibe I got from looking at her and the man she was with. Used to work in the ER. Had a man come in with ripping chest pain that started not but 30 minutes prior after he moved something heavy at his office. I knew he was going to die just by looking at him. Massive overwhelming dread just seemed to engulf me. I did his EKG and I hoped something would be wrong with it so we could get him a bed. His EKG was perfect. Not 5 minutes later he went into cardiac arrest on our waiting room floor. After running the code for 45 minutes, he didn't make it. He had a massive aortic dissection. There wasn't much hope. This was almost 3 years ago and I've seen more shit since then, but the memory is still burned in my mind, and it hurts knowing I was the last person to speak to him. Dated a guy for 3.5 years. He joined the army and a few months later a girl at his base made a Thanksgiving post about being thankful. Tagged him and a ton of other people in it. I pestered him about her a few times but he was very adamant about her just being a friend. Until 5 months later, when he told me he knocked her up by sending me a meme. Edit. I'm editing to include the meme and some more info LMAO. He had been cheating on me for 9 months by the time he got her pregnant. Admitted to that. So my gut instinct was absolutely right. In her Facebook post, she had mentioned a boyfriend and my ex-boyfriend had never mentioned her before. This was in 2014-2015. When my dad passed out in a bathroom at the airport. I told him to purchase an AED because they were selling them at the time at Sam's Club, 2007, for $1K. I just knew it was an arrhythmia and I was right. He died a month later, and if he had his AED he might have survived. It was an arrhythmia. Not me but my wife. I had a work friend who used to come over to smoke blunts and play Xbox. I liked the guy even though I knew he was a bit odd. He was really good at Call of Duty and rolled a means blunt. He used to tell some tall tales that everyone knew were bullshit. Well, my wife, who was only my girlfriend back then, always got a creep vibe from him. She said he looked at her with so much anger and malice but never indicated any specific action that made her uncomfortable. After a while I stopped hanging out with the friend since he wasn't coming to town as much for work. Fast forward a few years and another mutual friend calls me to say the Xbox friend was killed by police. Unfortunately only after he had already killed his neighbor and his wife. Crazy. When I was a young kid back in the 80s I was playing on my front lawn when this van pulled up on the road and the sliding door opened. A guy about 19-20 aggressively waved at me to come to the van and I immediately knew something wasn't right, so I ran inside and told my parents and they freaked out and ran outside, but they were gone by then. Stranger danger wasn't really a thing back then and I had no idea what an abduction was at the time, but looking back on it my life could have ended that day had I chose to go over to the van. I often wondered after that day if they ever did get a kid to get into their van. A few years back I was dating a girl who went camping with a friend for a couple weeks. I didn't mind cause I trusted her. But I started to get a gut feeling she was cheating on me while she was gone. Shortly before she was supposed to come back into town she called and dumped me over the phone. Bonus points since I had literally just had brain surgery that she didn't bother to come back into town for. Should say dumped me for him. When I was a kid I had this teacher, I think grade 3, who was really creepy towards all of us girls. We would notice him looking at girls' butts or down their shirts. He was really weird and always found a reason to make girls stay after class for whatever. He gave me a really terrible feeling that I had never gotten from someone before. I never got too close to him and always made sure I wasn't in his room alone. I'm 25 now and he just got arrested last year for having child pornography and was also caught with a hidden camera in his pen that he would take pictures down girls' shirts with. So creepy. Can't imagine the amount of videos, pics this man has. He was an older man when he taught me in grade 3 and just got caught last year. Last year, I was staying up late watching Rick and Morty. My mom had been battling stage 4 metastatic breast cancer for a while. That night, she walked downstairs and just sat there with me until I decided to go to bed. I looked at her and in my heart I knew she was close to leaving. So I said good night. And she said goodbye, which confused me. Until the next morning when my dad woke me up and told me she had passed away overnight. It still makes me wonder how we both knew. When I thought it was really odd that someone who I considered more attractive than myself showed interest in me. Didn't listen to my gut when it said something was wrong with the situation and ended up being date raped. I honestly thought it was my low self-esteem trying to sabotage me, but apparently not. I had one of those, something is very wrong, feelings in my stomach many years ago when driving to work one morning. I couldn't shake it the whole way there, though it wasn't a long drive. Made it to work and sure enough, the entire mood seemed just as off. Got to where I was to start my day and found out one of our supervisors had committed suicide earlier that morning. That my husband was talking to a girl I didn't much care for. I would never ask him to stop talking to someone, but he knew it bothered me. He said he wasn't talking to her. Long story short, in the middle of an argument he pulls his phone out to quote her and he changed her name in his phone. So yeah, I knew. Spent 2 years itching for no reason. Hypochondria, gut told me it was cancer. Further research confirmed it for me. Told doctors for 2 years I had lymphoma. I was right, but they didn't figure it out until I was stage 4 advanced. I had been living and working in Korea, and one day I was coming up out of a subway station and saw a man talking to another foreign woman. She had that polite, frozen smile on her face, the "why is this guy talking to me" smile. I walked up to her, linked my arm with hers, and said, "Hey, Sarah. There you are. Are you ready to go?" And just started walking. The guy followed us, but I sped up, and made an abrupt turn into a coffee shop. We hid, and I saw him walk past, still looking for her. We ended up getting coffee and chatting for a bit, and I found out that he had followed her off the train, and had been getting increasingly aggressive for the last 10 minutes. I don't know what might have happened, but I'm really glad I interfered. I recently reported a coworker to management sort of based on some worrisome things I saw, combined with a gut feeling. Without going into a lot of detail, I saw some really subpar surgical prep. Now, I know people make mistakes sometimes, but there was something about this person's work that made me feel sick to my stomach. I couldn't sleep the next night thinking about it. I have a strong suspicion the coworker faked certifications and knowledge. Anyways, we will find out if my gut feeling is true. I didn't want to seem like a snitch, but when dealing with live patients, I feel a professional responsibility to say something before someone suffers permanent consequences. I hadn't spoken to a certain friend for a couple weeks but got a gut feeling to contact and talk to her at a certain moment. I immediately messaged her. That's how we always talk. We talked for a couple hours and into the night. A month later, out of the blue she just messages me, "Thank you." I asked her why she's thanking me. She said she was contemplating suicide on the day I got my gut feeling and had contacted her. Because she got to talk to someone on that specific day, she dropped the idea and hasn't attempted it again ever since. My girlfriend at the time was on top, and I get this feeling that I should really close the door even though I thought I was home alone. I wasn't. I signaled her to get off of me so I can close the door. She doesn't listen. My dad walks in on us and I was only 17 at the time. RIP. I'm 14 and was all alone in a dirt path in India and some guy was just sitting on a rock in the middle of the forest. I didn't make eye contact but I could see he was crying. I wanted to help but my gut told me not to. 3 days later was caught for murdering his wife and 5-year-old daughter.